Good evening. I'd like to call a meeting to order. This is the May 11th, 2016 meeting of the Lowell Conservation Commission. I'm going to start on the agenda. I'm going to take one item in order and one item out of order. The first item is also the first item on the agenda. It's a request for determination of applicability continued from the prior hearing date. It's Watermark Environmental. Project location is 221.4 Jackson Street, and it's construction of a 5 to 7 story commercial building with commensurate appropriate site work at 221.4 Jackson Street. The applicant has requested a continuance, I believe, to June 8th, the first June meeting. So we won't be doing anything on that tonight. Can I have a motion to continue to June 8th?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to continue till June 8th.
Seconded by Commissioner Varnum, motion by Commissioner Beardron. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. All right, so that's continued to June 8th. And tonight's last item on the agenda is a notice of intent, Vision Development, Inc. Project location is 1 Merrimack Plaza, and it was to construct a 205,000 square foot student housing building and adjacent to the Merrimack Canal, and the applicant has likewise requested a continuance on that. Christine, did they ask for a specific date?
The May 25th meeting.
So the next one, all right, so till the May 25th. So if you are here tonight for that, you're free to go, because we're not going to, other than just continuing it, that's all we're going to be doing on this. Do I have a motion to continue to May 28th?
To continue.
May 25th, I'm sorry. By Commissioner Varnum, seconded by Commissioner
Second.
Beardron. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. All right, now on to tonight's second item on the agenda is a request for determination of applicability. Fair Dermody Consulting Engineers. Project location is Keolis Commuter Services right-of-way, and they're seeking a determination of whether the boundaries of the resource areas are accurately delineated for renewal of the wetland delineation along the Keolis MBTA right-of-way. This is their semi-annual RDA for their right-of-way maintenance. Is there any questions or on this? This one is in concert with the Pan Am one that we dealt with last meeting. So
Move to issue a -3.
I believe
do they want a +9 on this?
according to the comments written by Judy, it looks like they're requesting a +2A and a -5.
+2A and a -5. All right.
I'll withdraw my motion.
It's a utilities maintenance, and -5 is utilities work. It's necessary utilities work. So the +2A is the act applies, but they're exempt, and the -5 is that basically the flip side to that. So, did they say why they wanted both of them? Usually one is sufficient, so.
I think one is because one refers to the act and one refers to the local ordinance, and so I think they were trying to get there.
No, one is, the +2A is the work is so extensive, the act applies, but they're exempt from the permitting requirements because of they're a public utility maintaining a necessary service. The -5 is they're a public utility. It's basically like a -3, only for a public utility. That it's what they're doing is necessary, and it's not likely to seriously impact the resource area, but it's a much lower threshold than a -3 is. So.
I didn't speak with the applicant, so I'm not sure for the exact reason why they wanted
All
both.
right. Yeah, I mean, usually the +2 covers them, but, all right, so, all right, do I have a motion?
Move to issue a positive 2 and a negative 5 on this application.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Okay. Moving on to tonight's third item is a request for determination of applicability. The BSC Group, Inc. Project location is 32 Reese Ave, and they're seeking a determination for tree removal associated with the installation of a temporary access road within a 100-foot buffer zone. And if I could kindly have you identify yourself for the record.
Sure. My name is Teresa Bertante with BSC Group, representing Massachusetts Electric Company.
And can you outline for us what you're doing?
Sure. So they have a maintenance project going on the L1, L7 line. And the location of the line actually crosses Route 3. And they have difficulty accessing this structure, Structure 8, because their old access comes off of the on-ramp to Route 3. So they are proposing to put in a temporary access from the back of the parking lot at Showcase Cinema along an easement that they have in the area. And it'll be located within the buffer zone. And there are a few trees right at the edge of the parking lot that they are looking to cut in order to be able to access in.
Can you just give the noise a chance to abate itself? Thank you. All right. Go ahead.
Sure. So in the photographs that were provided shows you those trees that are right at the edge that may need to be removed. To put in the access road, they're going to be using timber mats so that they don't have to stone the area, they don't have to do any sort of grading. It'll provide a level surface. Once they're done with the work, the mats will be removed and the area left to be restored. Are there any questions?
Yeah, so what's the size of these trees at the,
There's one that's, I don't have the exact DBH, but it's pretty large. It's right on the edge of the ditch along the parking lot there.
all right. Okay, so, so is there any other tree removal going along the,
Once they get past that line, it's all just raspberry bushes and there's shrubs in there up to the structure. So there's no additional tree removal further in that's required.
all right. I don't have any further questions. Commissioner Barnum?
Is this work planned for this season?
Yes.
And how often will this have to be repeated?
This is
Not-
a one-time. They're unlikely to go back
Okay.
unless there's, something happens to the line. They would go back in, but given the fact that they're now, going to have an access in there without any trees, they're not going to be needing to do anything like this in the future.
And you're not proposing any replanting?
If they cause any disturbance to the ground, such that you wouldn't have a seed bank there, then yes, we would have them seed. At the very least, they will be required to mulch and stabilize the area.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Beardron?
The map that's provided, how wide is the swamp mats?
Timber mats are 16 feet wide.
Okay, yeah, it looked like it was around 20 feet.
Yes, so the actual clearing, they may need to trim to get in there, and then the mats themselves are 16 feet, so 2 extra on each side.
2, okay.
Yep.
And then, what's the purpose of this structure?
It's along a distribution line.
Okay,
So they're doing maintenance along the line. The structure is actually over the line in Chelmsford.
Yeah.
But they're going to be replacing the structure.
looks like they're removing
itself.
2 and replacing 2.
Yep, that's
Okay.
right. So 1 for 1.
So this is a temporary mat for kind of like a permanent access road for as long as you can
Well-
use it if you have to go back?
It's within, they have an easement in the area.
Yeah.
Usually this type of activity would be exempt, but they haven't maintained it. So we're filing an RDA because they're gonna have to go in and might need to move trees within a buffer zone.
Okay.
So given it hasn't been maintained for a very long time, that's why we are coming before you.
And then I was just curious, it says that these are field delineated wetlands. Were these delineated for this RDA, or these are just, were used before?
We updated them recently
Recently?
for the RDA.
And flagged it and
Yep,
everything?
yep,
Okay.
everything's been flagged. And then there's existing flagging along the parking lot from other activities within the area as well.
Right, I'm good.
Commissioner McDonough?
No questions.
Commissioner Dillon?
I have no questions.
Is there anyone here who'd like to, well, first off, Christine, is there anything additional from the city on this?
No.
No, okay. Is there anyone here who would like to comment on this request? Are you asking for a -3?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Do I have a, hearing none, do I have a motion to issue a -3?
I'll make a motion to issue a -3 determination.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Beardron, seconded by Commissioner Varnum. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the ayes have it.
Thank you, have a good evening.
Thank you. Have a good night. Tonight's fourth item is a request for determination of applicability. Biara Rio Trust, and it's 26 Andover Street, and that's the project location, and it's to construct a deck adjacent to the Concord River and within the 100-foot buffer zone.
Hi,
Yes, sir, if you could, if you're both going to speak, could you both identify yourself for the record?
absolutely. My name's Nicholas Carvello.
I'm Kayla Carvalho. I am the owner of the property.
Okay, can you tell us, outline for us what you're planning to do, please?
Absolutely. So initially, Sean Shanahan had reached out to me and made contact to condemn the deck because of the fact that we had some major snowfall over the past few years. So I went ahead and condemned the deck, and my next process was to go ahead and pull a permit to rebuild the deck, and unfortunately, it was brought to my attention that I had to go in front of the conservation because it was within 100 feet of the Concord River. So this is why we're here today. The deck itself, the plans have been approved by the building commissioner, Sean Shanahan, and I have a plot here that I had given a few weeks in advance in regards to where the netting would be placed and some landmarks. The original footprint of the deck was, I believe, 51 feet wide by 28. And the proposed footprint would be 51 by 20. So it's a little bit smaller. And it is a staple of the property, considering that it is a bar/restaurant along the river.
Is that it?
Yes.
Let me ask you a couple questions. How long have you owned the property for?
2002.
Since 2002.
Since 2002, okay. So, I'm just, do you own the
National Grid.
flat portion that's
No, so we are in
the
the
elbow
process.
there?
I presented some documentation in regards to the process that we have been with National Grid. They proposed two options. First one was to lease the property, and the second option was to purchase the property, and we decided to go ahead and purchase the property.
Okay,
And you should have some documentation in regards to National Grid that was given to us later on, early this evening, actually.
I've seen an easement agreement unsigned.
Unsigned, correct.
So that's the only thing I've seen. So, what the process that's going to go through is, are you purchasing an easement or are you purchasing the property
The
outright?
property itself, number 4 Andover Street,
Okay.
off from National Grid.
All right, so,
They are currently pulling soil samples as we speak, and both their attorney and our attorney are negotiating the final purchase price.
okay, so, there's a problem with the filing, first of all, is that National Grid didn't join in the filing. Okay, I mean, that's just a procedural thing, because you're filing to do work on property you don't own. Okay?
Understandable.
And the landowner is not, I understand that you're talking to them, but to us, that doesn't mean anything.
I understand.
Okay? So,
The reason being why we're here today is because of the fact that we do have a current tenant that has been there for, I don't know, about 5 to 7 months. He is in the process of opening. And in order for him to open it, they have to have access or easement out of that back door. And with regards to purchasing the property, National Grid had agreed on, I could literally lease the property tomorrow if I wanted to, but cost-wise, that wouldn't be too effective. So I decided to purchase the property, which time-wise would be a little bit more, not as efficient, but costly would be a little bit more efficient.
all right, so, all that being said, there's a couple things that need to happen before we can even issue a decision here. And that is, one, you have to acquire the property.
Okay.
Or National Grid has to join in this filing.
They did present a letter. I'm not sure if you received that.
It's not,
Okay.
I understand that, but they're
Okay.
not part of the filing. And
Okay.
that's a necessary component. What I mean by that is we could say, issue a particular ruling on this, but if the ruling applies to property that, one, you don't own, and two, that has owned by someone else that didn't participate in the process, we have no authority to do that, okay?
Any conditions?
Huh?
Any conditions possibly?
No, we just don't have authority to do that. We can't just, I mean, let's put it this way, your neighbor's your next door neighbor, right? And you want to do something on their property, so you come and petition us, and we say, yeah, sure, great, and we give you an order to do something on their property. We can't do that. That's
Oh, yeah.
basically what's going on here.
I understand.
Okay. I understand that National Grid you're in negotiations with them, but the way the law works is they need to either formally join this action as the landowner, or you need to purchase the property. Until either one of those happens, you're not really properly before us, okay? Because you're petitioning to do something on property you don't own, okay? And the landowner, is not a part of the filing. All of that being said, this has come before. We've had action on this property before.
Regards to 4 or 26?
Well, it was in the back,
Okay.
and it was probably, it was the deck? Yeah. So I don't know if you were the owner at the time, but if it was in 2002, I think you were. I guess I'm just a little curious, because back then, it seemed to me that, it was represented that the property was owned. So, I mean, that's really not an issue at this point in time, but I'm just, I don't like things to be represented and then they're not, in fact,
No,
that's how
absolutely
they
not.
are.
Absolutely not. And that's when Sean Shanahan came to me and had mentioned the fact that the deck itself was not in a safe manner. We went ahead and did things in the right manner to correct the fact.
So there's some additional concerns too, from what I've read. So you're going to be purchasing the property outright, but you're giving a utilities easement back to National Grid or Mass Electric, or Mass Power, whatever it was, which is a fairly standard thing. But the easement that I read is very much more comprehensive than the standard than the standard utility easement that we typically see.
Okay.
Okay, so assuming you are able to purchase the property, or alternatively, assuming that National Grid joins in this action, the preferable one is that you purchase the property
Absolutely.
outright. At that point in time, okay, you'll need to provide the documentation, the proof of the purchase, that everything's been recorded. But likewise, you're gonna have to furnish, you have a draft or a negotiated, I don't know what it is, it's not signed.
It's not signed. It's
Utility,
drafted.
utility easement going back. We'll need to see that, and that will need to be reviewed by the law department. And the reason I say that is because generally utility easements are fairly vanilla. This one is not. I am a lawyer, but I'm not the lawyer for the Conservation Commission.
Can you give me a brief breakdown as to why it's not so vanilla?
There's some verbiage in there that the National Grid or
Sure.
is taking back a little bit more than is standard on a typical utilities easement. What I want to make sure is that if we issue an order on this, that's not contrary to the easement that you're giving back, because sometimes you can give back easement rights, and one of the things is you can't encumber our easement in any way, okay? So if that's the case, it may be okay for the commission to do that, but it might not be okay for the
Sure.
commission to do that. So that's what I'm saying. Typically, we can deal with those issues, but this is a non-standard, this is an individually negotiated easement going back to them. It's not their standard boilerplate language that they deal with usually and that we see usually, okay?
Well, I would hope to think that I have somewhat of a good relationship that I've grown over the last few months, because I've called them 20 times on a daily basis to get to this point.
So what I'm just telling you is once it comes back after you've acquired the property or they've joined in the action, that verbiage that is signed and will be, is signed will need to be reviewed by the law department also prior to us, because we don't want to be put in a situation where we issue an order and then they come back and say, no, that's contrary to our easement. You can't do that.
Okay. So let me ask you another question then.
The alternative is you could do that in advance. You could just there could be some verbiage in there that says, you can encumber the property with a conservation, with a Lowell Conservation Commission order of conditions or whatnot, so, okay. Now, I know you're looking for a negative determination, but generally, negative determinations can go out with conditions too, and that would be the issue, okay?
Okay, in the near future, we do have a current tenant there that is just about to open up. The city considers that as an easement. Can I just put a stairway as an exit over there instead of a deck that's 51 by 20 feet long?
I'm not sure, are you doing that just on your property?
Yes,
Would be.
Just
Yeah.
on that narrow, 9.3
just the
strip?
one flat, straight down.
Yeah.
Do you need that?
Apparently, previously, no, we did not per the fire department, but speaking to Mr. Machado, Inspector Machado, it sounds as if we do currently.
You need another exit.
Correct, but currently, there is already 3 exits out of that one particular location. This is somewhat of a basement, which is ground level along the river, and there is a exit that brings you to the front of the building, one that brings you to the parking lot of the building, and one that brings you to the kitchen. In the past, the fire department had never recommended, they actually never recommended using that as an exit because of the fact that there's no way to get out because of the river kind of locks you in place. But Mr. Machado had said that is needed.
I would just like to say that the applicant's been in contact with Mr. Shanahan, so there's a few things that need to be completed for the business to get its occupancy, and if a point of egress is needed, I can't speak to that. I think, can he build stairs out that way? I'm not sure if there's multiple exits that they will unless they plan to have it occupied in the basement. But I think that's the question they want to know. Mr. Machado can't make that determination. That would be the building department. So it'd either be the area inspector or the building commissioner.
Yeah. Was there going to be a set of stairs off the deck? So I don't get why the stairs are so important, because from what I'm looking at, there's no stairs off the deck.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
so that wouldn't,
It's kind of somewhat conflicting, so.
as far as I know, that wouldn't be considered an egress. I'm not an expert on the fire codes, but if they want that to be an egress, then you're going to need to have these plans reviewed by, the building inspector and say, is this even a doable option? Because we don't want to be issuing saying, yeah, you can rebuild your deck and smaller footprint, but they're going to come back and say, well, you need to put a staircase in there, which now,
Extends it quite a bit.
well, yeah, or it reconfigures what you're presenting to us.
Sure.
So, I mean, just on that alone would be enough not to take any action on it tonight. But what I said is procedurally wise, you're not even before us properly, because you're asking to get a permit to do work that on property you don't own.
Okay. So can we assume that if I were to purchase the property within the next couple of weeks and present the same documentation to you in a couple of weeks from
Yeah,
now?
but you'd be able to do that. That's fine. I mean, you don't need to withdraw this. We can table this.
Okay.
The bigger though issue, the secondary issue that comes into play now is you want to do two things. One is you want to check with the building inspector or, fire department, whoever issues the permit to approve the deck or an egress type point. I know Commissioner Dillon may be able to speak on that.
Yeah, if you want, you should probably talk to fire prevention.
Sure.
I could probably get you the number, and they'd be able to direct you in the right way.
Okay.
So that's one thing you have to figure out. Bless you. The second thing you need to do is be a little proactive with National Grid with respect to their easement that they're taking back. Perhaps get a letter from who are you dealing with? Christopher Perella?
Correct.
Maybe get a letter from him stating that an RDA and it wouldn't be a concern to us on our easement back. Okay, and for me that would be sufficient. And that would probably be in a situation where we wouldn't need to send it to the law department, which would add more time to get an opinion back from them. But in the meantime, what we can do is we can send this to them, but I'm reluctant to do that because it hasn't been signed yet. Had it been signed, a whole nother story.
Sure. I was under the assumption that, considering that we have progressed so far and that we're nearly closure of this transaction, that we could sit here in front of you and present our case. And
Unfortunately, with real estate, until people sign on the dotted line,
yeah, it is. Yeah, I understand.
Until it's recorded, it can change. So,
Okay. Much appreciated.
Before you go, though, I don't know if there's any comments. We can. I don't want to send you on your way, and then there's some comments or other concerns that could have been addressed.
Sure.
So.
Were you planning any, assuming you buy this property, were you planning any landscaping around the deck?
Yes, absolutely. Considering the fact that there is quite a bit of traffic that goes along the river, and you have the rafters and things of that nature, our current tenant wanted to hire a landscaper and put some shrubs and maintain the landscape.
Because in my mind, that would be a separate issue to include in your proposal as to if you're going to disturb the bank of the river, you might need.
Not on the bank. I'm just talking like some tulips or something of that nature. Nothing.
well, I'm not quite sure how far, you're 90 feet from the bank?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Anything within 50 feet, probably, we'd like to see what the
Okay.
proposal would be.
Okay.
Commissioner Beardron? Any other comments, Commissioner Dillon?
I have that number if you want to take it down for.
Fire prevention for Lowell?
prevention.
I already
You
have it.
already
I
have it? Okay.
appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, and Commissioner McDonough? Nothing? Okay, anything additional from the city, Christine?
No.
Okay, all right, so when do you think you'll be closing on this?
I assume within the next 3 weeks.
Okay, all right, well, you may want to, why don't we continue this to you don't think before May 25th, right?
I could try to force it. National Grid, as you know, is it's a big corporation, so.
All right, why don't we continue this to the June 8th then meeting? And that'll give you a little bit of breathing room for, figuring out the stairs on the deck, and if you have to reconfigure that, and getting a letter from National Grid commensurate with the easement back to them indicating that they have no objections to thing, and that'll give you a chance to close too. Okay,
Appreciate it.
all right, so do I have a
Thank you.
motion to, at this point in time, continue this RDA to June 8th?
I'll make a motion to continue it till June 8th.
Seconded.
And motion by Commissioner Beardron, seconded by Commissioner McDonough. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you.
Opposed, the ayes have it. All right, thank you. Have a good evening. Tonight's fifth item is an enforcement order continued from prior hearing. Donald Doubleday, 71 Cheryl Lee Lane, concerning DEP file number 206451. The violation location is 71 Cheryl Lee Lane. Shed is located within 25 feet of the riverfront associated with the Clay Pit Brook, bordering vegetated wetlands and floodplain. The enforcement orders to remove the shed was ratified by the Commission on March 23rd, 2016. And from what I understand, the shed has been removed from the riverfront area?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe I forwarded pictures to the
Yeah, we
commission
got
later
some
this
pictures.
afternoon.
Yeah.
But it's been
All right. So, and he's not here tonight, or the landowner's not here tonight,
The
so.
landowner was unable to make it.
Okay, that's fine. Do we have any other concerns about this property?
I think there may still be playground equipment in the, but I'm not concerned with that.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's a very small footprint on the area.
Any other discussions? All right, do I have a motion to lift the enforcement order?
I'll motion to lift the enforcement order.
Seconded by
Second.
Commissioner Beardron, motion by Commissioner Dillon. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the ayes have it. And by lifted, I mean vacated, so just to clear that up. Moving on to the sixth item is also an enforcement order, also continued from a prior hearing. And Lacerda Masonry, the violation location is 76 Magnolia Street, and its disruption of land subject to flooding was observed during a site inspection conducted on February 11th, 2016. The homeowner was ordered to install a silt fence and straw wattle along the entire property line. What's going on with that one, Christine? I believe there's a dumpster still on the site, and
There's a dumpster on the
they've
driveway.
removed the piles, but the
The
site's
piles,
still
yep.
disturbed.
The silt fences are up. The piles of dirt and of scrap wood have been removed from the yard. The dumpster is still on the driveway. It looks like a temporary dumpster. They do have building permits open for interior demo.
Okay.
The ground, however, is still disrupted from the heavy machinery, and he has not, he says he's gonna loam and see, but he hasn't begun that process yet.
Okay. Do we, I mean, obviously, because of its close proximity to the Clay Pit Brook, we definitely want that to be stabilized. How do we want to proceed on this? I mean, do we want to continue with the enforcement order? Do we want to do something else? I mean, I'm opening it up for
I think maybe the
discussion.
problem is we don't really know what he has planned for the exterior of the property. He is within probably 50 feet of Clay Pit Brook. Does seem to be putting siding on the outside of the house and windows and things like that, but if we vacate the enforcement order, then we have no paperwork at all on this property, so I'm not sure whether he should have filed something else with us. Was that suggested when the enforcement order was given him? Or?
It was, because he did intend to construct a bulkhead, and when he came to the meeting, I think he deserted that idea. And we were under the impression that he was going to clean up the yard, and then he was going to do nothing else outside, but seeing as how the ground is still murky, and it wasn't until last week that all of the fill from the yard was removed. He's working with us, but it's at a slower timeline than we typically see with enforcement orders.
And the silt fence and hay bales are in good shape?
Yes.
Or silt fence?
Yep, they're still up.
Yeah.
And they looked good in the picture. I haven't been out there this past week myself.
If he were to be removing the siding, he wouldn't need a permit for that, correct?
Not necessarily. Depends on the type of site disturbance that would be going on, but no, not necessarily. If he was in the 25-foot zone, yeah, he'd need one, but
To
not-
replace siding on his house?
Hmm.
But he's in the 50. So,
Yeah, the Riverfront Protection Act says any work. It doesn't specify, it doesn't exempt.
so we have an enforcement order, we know he's gonna do siding, there's that temporary dumpster, so the question is, what do we do with this?
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, the ground needs to be stabilized with seeding or some other stabilization, but for me, I'd rather not just communicate through an enforcement. I really think that the owner needs to file, at least an RDA, so, I mean, and that way we can either condition, I mean, typically you'd do this under an NOI.
Because you changed the grade?
He was discussing it, and he was told he couldn't, so.
So since that meeting, he hasn't done any work on the ground. They're doing a ton of work inside the house, which is why I think the dumpster is in the driveway. I've gotten the impression that he was scared off from doing any work.
But the reason why we originally did this was because he had a pile of
Dirt
dirt.
and wood, and there was heavy machinery on the property.
So then, since then, he's removed all that.
The other concern is he's not very responsive. He's been to one meeting, I think, but the dirt was supposed to be removed shortly after that meeting, and it took weeks
Okay.
for anything to happen as far as remediating anything out there.
So, but all we really want him to do with this enforcement order at this time is seed? If he's not gonna do anything further? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, I mean, the site needs to be stabilized beyond just the straw wattles, so. But if they're gonna be bringing equipment in still, I'm assuming there's gonna be, I don't know. I mean, I'd like to know what they're doing. I mean, are they gonna be dropping off lifts of lumber or, sheetrock or, I don't know. I really don't have a clue as to what's going on out there, so. Certainly all of that is allowable. But, there needs to be a little bit of communication going back, or, the enforcement order can become a little bit more stringent than and it could become a cease and desist, in which case he can't do anything. inside or outside, so. And I don't think the landowner wants to see that, but it, you know, we need to know a timetable for site stabilization. You know, my preference is that proceeds under the normal process of permitting and not under an enforcement order.
Could we recommend that if he were to be bringing in any building materials, they could be kept stored in the driveway and not in that disturbed area?
Yeah.
Because think about it, he's probably like, what am I doing wrong? I piled this up, I've already gotten rid of it, what else do you want me to do? I put silt fence up. You know, at this point, all we're gonna tell him to do is seed.
No, I think the site has been disrupted with the heavy equipment, and it's going to need to be remediated. He has access from 2 streets. The lot goes straight through.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's been equipment entering from both sides,
Yeah.
basically. And where he doesn't come to the meetings, I think, you know, there needs to be a filing.
Yeah, I agree. So can we communicate that back to, I guess it's Mr. Lacerda or Mr. Lacrita?
Lacerda.
Lacerda, that he needs to, you know, follow this up with a formal filing.
In an RDA or no?
Yeah, I would, I mean, to me, he is very close, but the, again, I don't know what he's doing. I mean, if it's just for seeding and site stabilization and a little bit of light regrading to to restore the site, as Commissioner Varnum has indicated, that can most likely be done under an RDA. But if there's much more extensive work going on out there, then he may need to file an NOI. We don't know. You know, it's what he intends to do will dictate the level of permitting that he needs.
Then I guess I would also recommend that any building materials are stored in the driveway.
Yeah, I mean, if you want, tell him we'll extend the enforcement order to June 8th, at which point in time we'll issue a cease and desist order on the enforcement order. No further work, okay?
Do we need to make a motion on that?
Yeah.
Are we all good? Yeah.
Is there any, I'd open it up by making a motion, and then we can discuss it, obviously, but,
So I'll make a motion to extend this enforcement order to June 8th.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so now I open it up for discussion. It sounds harsh, I mean, obviously, but, you know, I don't know how communicative he's been with the office, other than what you've said, but I think he needs to be a little bit more responsive, and, you know, it's noted that it did take him quite a bit of time to remove the pile.
Yeah, wasn't there almost snow on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, he
it
was out
winter.
here,
Yeah,
you know, but, I mean, the ground hardly froze this year,
yeah.
so it's,
So for clarification, for my purposes, extend the enforcement order to June 8th, but would you like me to have him file an RDA with
Yes.
our office prior to that?
yeah.
So at the June 8th meeting,
Yeah,
we
it's
have it?
the enforcement order will go beyond June 8th. I'm just saying that we'll amend it at that point in time to cease and desist
Okay.
from all activities until such time that he files. Okay. I mean, you don't get carte blanche. I mean, typically under an enforcement order, you know, if the applicant or if the landowner is working with us, we'll work along with the enforcement order. But once that sort of ends, you know, at that point in time, you need to start either do what you were told to do in the enforcement order or make a formal filing. You know, you can't just not do anything, so, okay. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed, the ayes have it. All right, so Christine, if you could communicate to him the gist of what we had discussed, so. Okay, thank you. All right, and tonight's, I don't know what number this one is anymore, but it's also an enforcement order continued from a prior hearing. Oh, I want to do this, and I'm going to apologize, but David Ortiz and Brenda Owen.
No.
No, I know, I had to do it, but
Brenda Ortiz was the
and-
previous owner.
and David Owen. Violation location is 26 Old Ferry Road, and it's construction of an accessory structures and installation of a fence within land subject to flooding. The structures and the fence were observed on a site visit on Tuesday, April 19th of 2016. The enforcement order was ratified by the commission shortly thereafter on the 27th of April of this year. Yes, sir. If you could identify yourself. for the record.
David Owen, landowner.
Okay. Christine, from what I understand,
A fence and raised garden beds, and I believe at one site inspection, there was a stack of wooden pallets that may have been in the floodplain,
okay.
to be considered fill.
All right, so has anything been done in the interim since the enforcement order was issued and ratified?
Not to my knowledge. There was some difficulty getting in touch with the landowner to inform him of the enforcement order and what that meant, and there was some questions, and we wanted the homeowner to come here and talk to you
Okay,
guys.
all right, so, all right, Ms. Owen, if you could, so the situation out there in a nutshell is your property is in a floodplain, and not only is it in a floodplain, it's really in a floodplain, okay? And that's, how long have you owned the property for?
Since June 5th I purchased
Are
it.
you a Lowellian or from?
Actually from Lawrence,
Okay, so you.
close enough, up the
You
river.
remember the Mother's,
the river,
you
actually.
remember the Mother's Day flood?
Actually,
and-
no, I was living in Arizona at the
All
time.
right, well, your property was under several feet of water.
Nice.
So, the value to the floodplain is critical, okay? Every cubic foot, every cubic centimeter is important, okay? So the raised garden beds are something that we can, I know it's an environmentally good thing to do and whatnot, but that's considered fill. Perhaps flat garden beds that follow the existing topography.
I just have a really bad back, so I figured a raised was easier for me physically. That's all.
I don't know
Again,
what-
I was ignorant. I didn't know
I
what
don't know what to
restrictions
tell you.
there
That you
were.
may have, you're in a situation where you have potential compensation area where you can compensate for it out near the street, but those slopes are already fairly steep. I don't know if there's any way that you can make compensation for that. It's something to look into if you want to keep those raised garden beds. The other issue now is the fence. Believe it or not, we had a situation, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, where we approved a relatively really small fence. I don't even think it was much more than 8 or 9 poles, and it was chain link fence, and the amount of fill was less than a wheelbarrow full, and the DEP issued a superseding order on it and required the landowner to provide compensation or remove the fence. So
What exactly is compensation?
what it means is when you have a piece of property
Yep.
that's in the floodplain, which is up here, and you put something that takes up volume
Yep,
in the floodplain,
okay,
you've got to make up for that volume somewhere else,
okay,
okay? If where you put the fill
yep,
is at the highest point of your property, then you can't do it, okay? But if it's in a lower point, then you can find an area that's higher and grade it down such that you're providing a
replacement. in
replacement
essence,
at the
place for it to go.
same elevations. You, for instance, if this is your property and it's perfectly flat and there's nowhere on it, and you put a raised garden bed here, you can't dig a hole over here, because it's got to be at the same elevation.
Okay,
Okay, so if you don't have the matching elevations for what you're filling in, then there's no way you can provide compensation unless you go off your site. And that means a neighboring property, which obviously becomes complicated.
right,
And generally cost prohibitive. You do have places on your property you can provide compensation. You just need to do that. That's not something, we've issued an enforcement order. Unfortunately, to do changes like that, you would need to file a notice of intent to do that and provide some engineered plans showing that what you're providing for compensation is at or in excess of what you filled in the floodplain. In the meantime, though, you have to take that fill out. You can't leave it there. All right? You absolutely cannot leave it there. It's got to go.
Okay.
Okay? And I mean, it has to go like this weekend.
Okay.
So
I don't know how to do that, but okay.
the problem is the state law and local bylaw prohibits bringing in fill into a floodplain without a wetland permit. Okay, it's not maybe you can do it and get the permit. You cannot do it. Okay, it's very clear about that.
Okay.
It's a prohibitive activity, and where you live is particularly critical. And we are in flood season right now. So, and it becomes even more critical. We're in the spring. It was wet, it's dry. I don't know what next week, next month is going to bring. But this is flood season right now, so. So it's an unfortunate situation.
Yeah, where was, I have no idea where I would have even gotten this information.
Hey, this
until
is state law.
I got
This
snapped.
isn't, you're presumed to know that. This isn't something that, I mean, yeah, it's not something,
It just seems like something that's, I never would have fathomed.
Okay. I'm not saying you're a bad person. I mean, a lot of people do unintentional things and they're not being aware of it, but it's your property. Your property is floodplain. Those homes were built with special permits that went along with it. Your deeds probably have special verbiage in there indicating that they're flow-through foundations and whatnot. So that in and of itself is a tip-off that there's special considerations that go along with these properties, or with your property in particular. And because of that, those low-lying areas that are in the floodplain, you're not allowed to alter the topography at all without a permit. Okay? And
Okay.
that means bringing in bark mulch. As minor as that, you can't do it. Okay?
I had no clue, so. Okay.
All right.
What do I need to do about the fence? It's fenced in for my dog, so now I need to figure out what to do with that.
It's a brand-new fence
It's been there since June last year.
when you bought the house?
No, when I bought the house, that month I fenced it in because I have a dog that needs to go out and she's used to having a doggy door, so she lets herself out because I'm a single owner and work a lot, so I gave my dog some way to let itself out, so.
What kind of fence is it?
Chain link, 4
It's
foot.
chain
I
link.
called the
How
building
many-
department and said I wanted to build a fence, and they said as long as it was 6 feet or under, I was fine. So I
How
said,
many-
okay.
How many poles is it?
Oh, probably about 20.
It's 3-inch?
No, it's 3-inch corners and 1.5 line poles.
Huh? No. How big are the raised beds?
Raised beds are 5 foot by 2 by 24 foot, 1 by 12 foot.
Say.
They're 5 feet wide,
Yeah,
and 2 of them are 24 feet long, and 1 of them's 12 feet long.
okay, and how high are they?
There's about 20 inches of soil.
Okay, those are fairly substantial.
It's for a garden?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just have a really bad back, so I didn't want to lean over and be planting in the ground. But then again, I was probably going to screw that up too if I planted in the ground, so I guess I buy my vegetables.
So I'm assuming there's a the accessory structures are a doghouse and a shed?
I was under the impression
There is no
that the
shed.
accessory structures were the garden beds.
Other planting
The
beds.
raised
Okay.
garden beds.
All right.
And it's funny, because when I was filling them, Sean Shanahan came by and kind of joked about it and took some pictures and said, really told me I had nothing really to worry about, so I kept filling them. Had I known then, I would have stopped filling them, because then it would have been a pile that a truck could have picked up, but now I got to figure out how to get it out of there.
Well, I'm really, I want to work this out. I really am loath to sit here and say, I know what I said about remediating it ASAP, and I do mean that. But I'm very loath to making an order or a formal order, at least for me, I'm just speaking for me, about having you remove the fence and having you remove the garden beds. That being said, though, it's critical, and I mean really important, that you, and even if we could try and figure something out tonight, to find a place on your property where we might be able to get compensation and to get that done. And again, I'm somewhat reluctant to say, rent a Bobcat, have them come out, or have a contractor come out and scoop out a couple of cubic yards of, that is sufficient to match the raised beds. I mean, they can be measured and calculated, right? They're approximately 2 feet high and 5 by, what did you say?
Well, it turns out to be 60 linear feet,
60
300
linear,
square feet.
by 60 linear feet by 5 feet wide?
Right.
So you're 300,
300 square feet, 2
Wait,
feet
and so
deep,
you're
600 square feet.
and you're 2 feet deep, so you're 600 cubic feet. That's a fairly substantial amount of fill. And the real issue, though, is that the compensation you have to provide has to be at that elevation. It can't be above it, and it can't be below it. It has to be at the same elevation.
I'm not sure what you mean, so like dig out the bank at the front,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which means I'd be disturbing the tree up there, which is another issue, is it?
Yeah,
not?
I mean, I'm saying it's probably not a desirable thing, and I made the comment that it's not going to be easy to do. But those are your options. It's either you have to take the beds out and the fence out, or you have to find compensation for
I mean,
them.
compensation for the fence is probably not as bad, but trying to,
No, it's probably not, but what's the, if memory serves me right, you're probably, and Mr. Hamlet could probably tell us, but I think you're probably 4 or 5 feet below the 100-year floodplain out there. You're not close. It's not like you're just a couple of feet. You're significantly below the floodplain. So you would have to provide compensation for the entire fence and for all of the elevation to the raised beds.
how would I calculate the fence? I don't know how to figure out.
Oh, it's simple. You just take the diameter of the pole, multiply it, the area, cross-sectional area, multiply it by how high it is, and that gives you the volume. You just add up, if there's 20 of them, you multiply it by 20. If there's 4 corner posts and they're 3-inch diameter,
Okay.
it's 3-inch diameter is 1.5 inch radius, right? You square
Hollow.
that, multiply it by pi, and multiply it by how tall it is. So, and that's your volume of one post.
Do I literally deduct for the fact that the poles are hollow?
Yeah.
So water will fill that, so do I
No,
calculate the
no,
thickness of the
no.
wall?
No, you gotta pretend they're solid.
Solid. Think about this as like,
Wow.
this is how I explain it to people. Think about it as like a bathtub.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say you put a bunch of rocks in that bathtub. So now the bathtub's gonna flow over and flood. So you need to make another small bathtub in order to catch that flow, to have that compensation of that overflow.
But you said it can't be at a lower grade.
Right, it has to, see, the problem is the problem is say this desk is my floodplain. And I dug a hole over, I put my, this is my fill, right? So I need to compensate for this, right? So I dig a hole over here. The problem is, in a flood event, that's already underwater,
Because you're already in the
Okay.
floodplain.
okay?
Yeah.
You're already in the floodplain, so that's already been filled.
So even though you're removing the
Yeah,
soil,
it doesn't matter, it's already been filled. So by the time the flood waters get to this elevation, that's no longer compensation. So it's got to be at the same elevation. So if you have high ground over here, you can cut
Level that
out in
out.
the high ground at the same elevation that this is. You can't do it above because you have to provide the compensation at this elevation. If you do it above and the water never gets there, then there's no compensation for it. That's, the critical thing is that it's the same or more at the same elevation. And, you know, the act is you're supposed to calculate this on foot-by-foot increments. So there's no leeway in that. That's, you know, that's what the act provides, so.
And if you came to us with a permit for what you've already done and weren't able to make that compensation, we wouldn't even allowed what you did, unfortunately.
okay.
Does that make sense? Because you need to provide the compensation. But I do want to say in your defense, this entire subject makes me so mad because you are a perfect example. You look like you're educated, you look like a great guy, and you had no idea that you were doing something wrong.
Complete ignorance. I'd really like
Not
to.
ignorance, it's nobody.
Maybe a pamphlet should have come in the mail that said, hey, welcome to the neighborhood. Oh, by the
Yeah.
way, these are your restrictions, because I have complete ignorance, and it's unfortunate. I'm just trying to do something good, and now.
And you're not the only one, so.
And
there-
from what I'm hearing, the cost of vegetables is cheaper than doing all this work, so now I'm being forced to just forego the project and rip everything out, and it's sad. It's kind of crazy. I tried to do something good, and that's,
Unfortunately, when you buy property in the floodplain and you see on your deed that you're in a floodplain and you need to get flood insurance now, it means this whole nother round. If anything you want to do on your property, you now need a permit, and people are not educated, unfortunately, on that.
Yeah.
And we've tried to do things, I've said, you know, can we put things on the deed? Anything that is gonna educate people, and we can't. So this topic really makes me mad, and you are a perfect example right now of what.
there almost should be a training class for, hey, you're buying property in a floodplain, this is your
Correct.
rules, because it really, something that says, hey.
You
it's
can't
just-
even repave your driveway. Nothing.
Honestly, I wouldn't have bought the house.
Well, you can
So-
without a permit. It's just.
Just say I'm
Permit.
considering selling now, how's that? Because this is just crazy.
But in the meantime,
But-
let's work the problem before us, and that's, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, I'm very, like I said, I'm very loath to order the removal of the fence and the beds if compensation can be found, but if you're reluctant to
No,
do
no,
that.
I think there can be compensation for the fence. I think I can figure out that footprint and figure that out, and I don't care if I have to dig out the bank for, some of the bank for that, but I don't think there's enough bank there to dig out enough for the planting beds. Without, then how am I gonna put a retaining wall for the parking lot between the Elks and my house? How do I do the front yard? Now I'm gonna have to take out a tree, which means that's a violation too, I'm guessing. So I'm kinda stuck. I mean, I could probably find enough soil in the bank to take out to take care of the fence, but the planting beds are, I think, done. I mean, I only have one side of the house I can do anything, the other side is the driveway. Can't exactly rip out the driveway to compensate. The front entrance of the house is what it is, so now it's gonna require all kinds of retaining walls and stuff like that, which is actually taking away drainage.
Yeah, that's.
By having to add cinder block, now I'm adding more to it, so it's,
Well, that's my comment, that it was gonna be difficult to find it because of the shape of the property.
right.
So I'm not going to sit here and say it can't be done. What I will tell you, though, unfortunately, is that it can't be drawn on a napkin either. This is something that has to be engineered,
And
most likely.
spending 10 grand to do something to grow my own
I
vegetables is not
can't
cost
speak,
effective.
I can't speak for that, but it's not going to be free, right? And you
Right.
know that, I know that. And, it's certainly not going to be, it's certainly not going to be insignificant.
Could he have a little bit more time to just look at Oliver and
Yeah,
some certain things and see exactly where the floodplain line is on his property?
Yeah, I mean, well.
It's not, is it gonna rain this weekend?
Yes.
Oh.
It's supposed to rain all weekend. The topographies are available on the city GIS site, but they're given in 2-foot increments. There's an overlay for the floodplain, but that doesn't give you how high it is, okay? And it's not terribly accurate either. To actually find out exactly where the floodplain is on your property, you need, well, actually, you know what, we've still, when those properties were built out, we probably still have the
The original NOI?
plans, yeah, so if you dig those up, all of those would be available, and they probably haven't changed all that much, that you'd at least be able to get a sense for where it is.
Right, all I know is based on the elevation plan, my flood insurance was drastically reduced.
Yeah.
So-
So
I know that was part of it.
just, if Christine could make a copy of maybe you could make a copy of the full-size plan, so it's, human readable. But, who was that? That was Steve,
This will be the plan that when your house got built, so where the
Right.
floodplain actually
Steve
is.
O'Neill.
Yeah.
Right.
yeah. Yeah, Steve O'Neill was the developer of those properties.
Just looking down the road a little, I wonder if you might relocate your beds to some other property.
Unless I put them on the front perimeter right on the street, there's really
No,
nothing that's
I'm
above
talking about
floodplain.
off-site. Perhaps talk to Mill City Grows, see what they could suggest, because there are little parcels, I know, here and there that perhaps you could relocate them to that are out of the floodplain.
Yeah, they're out on Fowler and, which is not too far, it's just a quick
It's
bike
just a
ride.
couple streets from you.
Yeah.
They have 4 acres up there that perhaps they wouldn't mind having a few raised beds on the side if you let them use a couple of them or something.
And just to let you know, this isn't a Lowell thing, this is a state thing.
I know, I just wouldn't have bought in the floodplain if I knew all this.
Most people don't.
Until you find out that you got in trouble, and then it's too
I
late.
mean, and just to put perhaps a little exclamation point about how serious and important this is there's a representative here from the Pawtucket Citizens Council, and they generally attend these meetings when there's floodplain issues in their neighborhood, because all of these folks had suffered tremendous losses due to flooding, and they fight for every thimbleful.
And you want to know too, if there was a flood, you'd be sitting on his side too, because, again, you don't want your neighbors putting rocks in that tub and now your house is flooding more. So,
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Just ignorance is bad.
No,
That's
it's,
all. I understand it is what it, and I totally agree, but I just didn't know.
Yeah, I'm a lawyer and I don't know all the laws, so it's, you couldn't sit down in a year and read all the changes the IRS makes to the tax code. How are you supposed to know what the law is, right? So,
Who do I work with to figure out, I can do the calculations on the fence,
Christine.
but who do I work with?
Christine.
All right.
But you're gonna need an engineer, though, to delineate any changes.
you couldn't just use Oliver?
Huh?
Could he use Oliver to figure out where the floodplains are?
Well, we have plans that'll
Okay.
probably show where the
Where
floodplain
it
is. Yeah, it'll give you some idea, but if you're gonna make any changes as far as providing compensation, you're gonna need something engineered.
Even for the fence part? I can't imagine that's more
Probably
than a
not.
couple of yards.
Probably not for the fence, but it's important that it's.
I already figured the planting beds are gone, because
Yeah,
I'm not gonna spend 10 grand to grow vegetables.
See, the thing with the fence is, and again, I'm not sure the elevation of the floodplain, but let's make an assumption it's at 4 feet or 3 feet, okay? And your poles go up 6
4
feet. 4 feet?
Yep.
Okay, so let's just say all but the top 6 inches are in the floodplain. So you have to provide compensation for the first foot coming out of the ground at the same elevation. For the second foot coming out of the ground, and if that's at elevation 99, you've got to find a part on your property that's at the same elevation, carve out how many cubic feet are at the second foot, and then go to the third foot and find that somewhere on your property, probably just another foot above where you just did, and carve out the same volume, and actually, it's gotta be 5% more, but, at that elevation too. So the important thing is you gotta match the elevations. You know, you can certainly take more out, and you could certainly go a little lower and a little higher, but, you know, again, sometimes that's not feasible, and, you know, like you were saying, it might be a situation where a retaining wall is necessary, who knows, you know? But if you're on a slant, which your property, you know, where you're probably gonna take the compensation or provide the compensation for, you know, it's a little bit more complex than just carving it out, because you've gotta match the volumes on the slant, so it tends to, when you cut a cross-section on a slant, it tends to take up more area, okay, than if you're just going vertical. Okay, so the disturbance is much greater, just so you're aware of that. At first blush, it sounds like, well, it's just a pole, it's not a lot of volume, but when you're taking it out of something that's, you know, maybe a 1-to-4 slope, which you probably are about there on your property, you're looking at a, you know, maybe 20, 30-foot disturbance in the lawn, so.
If he gets rid of the beds, can he plant just a regular garden?
Yeah, but again, he's, you know.
But I'm not supposed to disturb the soil.
Yeah, like, will the compensation of the tomatoes
Yeah,
take up
no,
room in the
that's
floodplain?
fine, that's an allowable use of the property, it always has
You
been.
just can't it's because you filled. If you bring it back down to the level, you can plant there.
Let's put it this way, you plant a maple tree. That's okay. The maple tree grows up to be a really big maple tree, and it's taking up a lot more volume. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You cut down the tree and leave the stump on the, you know, and leave the felled tree on your property, that's a violation.
Yeah, you can't cut down trees either.
No, it's not the fact of cutting down the tree, it's now the stump, the trunk is taking up volume in the floodplain.
But the tree wasn't?
Yeah, the tree is a naturally occurring thing.
And the
It's a
tree,
tree,
Soaks up water.
and
tree
soaks
will
up
soak
water.
up the water
Yeah.
through the roots, so that would actually be,
Does it help
Take
that I
it
was putting
away.
in a rain barrel?
I'm just giving you,
right.
I'm just giving you an example. So you certainly can plant, but your beds have to be at the existing grade.
Existing
They
grade.
can't be raised.
So you can still have your garden.
What's that?
You can still have your garden.
Yeah.
It's not raised up.
After this, I think I've lost my taste. It's not worth it now. All right, so I gotta get the planting beds removed, and I guess I'll work with Christine on figuring out what to do about the fence.
Yeah, if you can dig up some of those old plans, you should be able to find a file on them, so.
And somebody can maybe explain this to me again?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'll be getting some, if you've ever looked at a topography plan, and if not, I'm sure someone in the office can help you point out where, but it's just like looking at a map, a detailed map, and it'll indicate, there'll be a line on it where the 100-year floodplain is, and anything inside that line, you know, below the 100-year elevation is floodplain, and you can't change it. And anything above that, you can do whatever you want to it, so.
So for example, it might say floodplain elevation 99.2, and you'll see topo line 99. So you know when it's 100, that's outside the floodplain, but anything below is in
I believe where you are, the elevation is 101? Yeah,
101.
so,
So you'll follow that topo line 101, and anything below that's in the floodplain.
and I believe your
So I would have to
backyard,
remove below that?
yeah, I believe your backyard, if I recall correctly, is about 96 something. So
You're like 5 feet in the flood.
yeah, that backyard is significantly in the floodplain, so.
I'm not 5 feet below the Elks parking lot, so I'm not sure where that lands. I'm just saying by height, the Elks parking lot is about the same height as the fence, so I don't know.
Okay, I mean, you may be a little higher.
I'm
But
assuming their parking lot is probably a
I'm just
decent
going,
line,
I'm just
right?
going on memory, so it's not definitive.
Is the
but-
parking lot in the floodplain?
I think it's right about 96, it's probably about 4 feet from his backyard to the Elks parking lot. The Elks parking lot is not
It's just out.
Just right above.
House and the drive-in theater are artificially filled in, so. But our house across the street's in the floodplain, there's extra neighbors in the floodplain, right around the corners of the floodplain.
Yeah, it's deceptive. There are subtle grade changes out there. You know, and it's always difficult standing on a property and you look at it and trying to match grades. You'd be surprised. Most people are generally not right.
I don't know how anybody of common would know how to figure this out.
Yeah, well, an engineer does it with software and hardware, so.
I think we have pictures of the last flood, and the water was almost to the top of the flow through. Car was underwater. At your house.
So,
Have you had water in your backyard yet?
No,
No, it's been fine.
I haven't seen any.
It'll be a great place for a garden.
It's really dry, see?
well, in 2005 and 2007, you could have driven a motorboat through there.
Fun.
That's
Okay.
why you have the flow through.
I'll have to get a boat. Do something in my backyard. Okay.
Okay,
I guess I'll work with Christine's.
all right.
Yeah.
And I can't stress enough how time critical this is. So,
Can you
I-
manually get the fill out there yourself, or?
those raised beds are huge.
I haven't seen them.
I
Okay.
mean, you'd need a Bobcat to do that.
Okay.
Something that, I mean, that's
Backhoe
what
to
did we
clean
say,
it out.
600 cubic feet?
300.
600.
There was 300.
It's 300 square feet.
Square
It's
feet.
2 feet deep.
Oh,
I mean, that's
What big?
I always go big.
27, that's 40 yards?
Roughly no, half of that.
Huh?
18 yards. 18 yards is what I ordered.
It's 18 yards?
I had 18 yards of loom delivered, so. Yeah, fun.
how much was that?
Not even gonna say it.
It's 20, it's a little bit more than 20 yards, so you're right. Okay.
Like I said, they were about 18 inches, not 22
Okay,
feet.
so,
But for
okay, so that's.
quick math, 2 feet
yeah.
was easy, but they're about 18 inches deep.
All right. Okay. What's the enforcement order is still, yeah, but I'd like to see, we're meeting, our next meeting is May 25th. In the interim, what I'd like you to do is, be in touch with Christine. She's been here, and she'll assist you in getting a plan, if we can find it. I mean, this project was a number of years ago, and we were in a different area when it was going on, so, and files get moved and lost, but if it can be found, hopefully.
The state will have copies. 'Cause
Huh?
The state will have copies.
Okay.
'Cause it was appealed.
Yeah.
He denied it.
So someone's got copies of the actual topography of your property that are fairly comprehensive. So,
You might actually look into who owns the corner lot where the monument is. If Mr. O'Neill still owns that, it could be that could be resculpted somehow if he built your house.
Okay.
If the city owns it, I don't think that's an option, but it's in the same area. It doesn't actually have to be right on your
Right.
lot, the compensation.
Who can give me information on him?
Mr.
Where can I
O'Neill?
find that?
Stephen O'Neill,
You can help me with that? Thank you.
Yeah, because you could get your compensation there.
I'm in a blur right now, so I
Yeah, yeah. Sleep on it.
have to, yeah, digest a little bit.
But,
Please plant your
Talk to
garden.
Christine. Oh, I have your card. You do have it? I got it from Sean, I thought.
yeah, I would hold off planting the beds, though,
Oh, I'm not planting those beds.
yeah, until,
I am,
so let's continue this to the May 25th hearing date.
I'll make a motion to continue this to May 25th.
Seconded by Commissioner Varna, motion by Commissioner Bearden. Any further questions from the, Mr. Owen? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, the ayes have it. And another resource to help you through this is, I don't know if you've met Mr. Hamblett
Nope.
at all. You may want to introduce yourself. And
I didn't even know they existed, so, again, it would be nice if something was thrown in my
They're
mailbox that said, welcome to the neighborhood.
Probably the best citizens council in the city. They're certainly the most active. So they're a good ally to have. I won't say what the flip side to that means, but they're a good ally to have. Okay. So,
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome to the
Aye.
neighborhood.
Yeah,
all right,
thank you.
good luck.
Yeah.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Once I figure out that what I'm doing.
All right, now, do I have a motion on any of the minutes? No, you haven't looked at them yet? No one has? Okay, so we're gonna table the minutes then until we have a chance to peruse those, so.
Okay.
And without anything further, Christine, nothing further from the city?
I do have an emergency certification.
Oh, that's
that I
right,
would like
that's
you
right.
to ratify.
Yeah, that's right. So in Heritage Drive, there was well, why don't you fill us in?
Yes, so 20 Heritage Drive, there's, the back end of the house is on stilts, and the concrete footings are in the bank, and they're deteriorating, and we have a letter from an engineer that's saying the columns for the level 1 deck and level 2 deck and level 2 living space are in various stages of failure and should be reconstructed as soon as possible. So we did allow them to start work to stabilize the area. They were under the impression that they might have to do additional work. So we required part of the emergency order to come file an RDA. So we actually do have that paperwork. It just hasn't been processed yet.
Do they have to file an RDA with an emergency order?
So the way an emergency order works is that we can ratify it within 30 days of ratifying it, they have to file.
Okay.
Regardless. We've sometimes, if the work was really minor,
Yeah.
have not required that.
Okay.
But there's really nothing in the act that says that's okay. It's kind of, I think, counterintuitive, where it's really minor, it's corrected under the emergency order, everything's done, stabilized, completed,
Yeah.
and, and then they're filing. That just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Okay.
This is a situation where, no, the emergency order was issued to do stabilization, but additional work needs to be done, so they do. That
Got it.
can't be done under an emergency order, so
Okay.
they need to file.
So do we have to ratify this?
Yeah, we need to ratify the emergency order. Yeah, EO, so.
Could I ask where Heritage Drive is?
It's in Belvedere off of Andover Street, off of East Merrimack Street. It's that one that goes down the steep hill and
So the resource is the
dead
river.
ends, the Merrimack River, yeah. So,
There is a river walk back there, the Lawrence to Lowell access easement, so if anyone did want to go down and look up, it's pretty incredible what's holding that house up that high on that bank, so.
how far, is this the one way down at the end?
So it's 20, so it's at the beginning of Heritage Drive. So if you're behind the house, it's at the top of the hill of Heritage Drive.
It's at the top of the hill?
Yeah.
So this one's set fairly far back then from the river, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
one could argue that might not be bank, but because the grade change is so steep.
Okay, all right. Okay. So again, I mean, they most likely should file an RDA.
People are living there?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe it was just purchased, so it's a new family in there. And they discovered the structural issues.
Okay. All right, so do I have a motion to ratify the EO? Did we already do that?
I'll motion to ratify the
Emergency order.
emergency order.
By
Second.
Commissioner Dillon, seconded by Commissioner Varnum. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay.
We have some minutes.
What?
We have minutes.
Yeah, we've already decided that we're not going to take those up tonight. And we're going to probably do one or two next meeting. Okay, I haven't looked at them yet, and I'm getting the consensus no one else has yet either, so. And I know you slaved over getting them done, because these are the first minutes we've seen in quite a while, so. But we got lazy, and we're not reading them, so. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. It's seconded by Commissioner Dillon.
Second
Biedron.
that motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, the ayes have it, and good night. No music? We have stuff to sign.
Can we send out a dang flyer? It makes me so mad. I'm telling you, people don't know. They just don't.
So wait, like, what's the logic of not letting people dig below the ground?
So it doesn't matter because you're already in the floodplain, so the water's gonna.
Right, but I mean, by your bathtub analogy, you're just making the bathtub bigger.
So like. Yeah, so like, if you,
Did you send them
if you put these rocks in,
Right.
I don't think I got that.
then, you're causing this much more volume that's needed somewhere.
Right.
So you have to compensate.
Like, why couldn't you just dig a hole, like, down there? So this would,
Because, okay, so this is the bizarre part, like what we were talking about, so his pole, let's say like this, so it was 4 feet, that's like this. So let's say the floodplain's only at 3 feet. So like what Chris was saying, this is the compensation, and it even confuses me sometimes, and I'm like an engineer. What Chris was saying, so they said the floodplain was at 101.
Yep.
So this is 101. And then this would be, so 1 foot, 2 foot. So this would be 101, this would be 100, 99, 98. This area, these areas